Hi, my dear friends and subscribers. I want to take a very short break from my usual royal videos, although I may refer to the royals as part and parcel of today's discussion. So, if you are here on this channel for royal gossip only, then I recommend you skip today's video as it will not contain any gossip or royal news and will have its monetization turned off, as today's video is something very close to my heart and not something I wish to talk about for any kind of personal gain whatsoever. Now, I was forwarded a copy of a Facebook post and newspaper report by my daughter back in South Africa the day before yesterday, and the post and report was about this 12-year-old boy who committed suicide. Although the reports were not too explicit, it somehow transpires that the child's depression stemmed from the following. He was teased at school because of his hair color and the big size of the shoes he wore, etc., etc. But it appears as if he did have a couple of buddies and he loved sport and playing rugby. But then COVID struck, and due to the lockdowns, this child was cut off from the few friends he had, and he was unable to partake in his favorite sport. And added to that, he feared for the health and lives of his loved ones. So clearly, this poor child lived in fear which was instilled in him by authorities via television, social media, the education system, his church, and everywhere he went. In his 11-year-old mind, it was a case of if you don't sterilize your hands every time you venture outside, you or a loved one will die. If you don't wear your mask every time you put a foot outside, you'll die. Now, this may sound ridiculous to us as adults, but we are not talking about adults here. We are talking about children with the reasoning power of children. But this is one child in South Africa. What about the thousands of others around the world? In the United States, the rate of suicide of those aged 10 to 24 increased nearly 60% between 2007 and 2018. But in late 2020 and early 21, the CDC feared that the pandemic affected the suicide rate among young people even more. And in August, a survey showed that 75% of respondents between the ages of 18 and 24 reported at least one adverse mental and behavioral symptom, plus 25% people, a quarter of those taking part in the survey, seriously considered suicide during the pandemic and or lockdown. But although this survey was out to find whether or how the pandemic affected young people, it found more than that. It was found that climate change talks and predictions have roughly the same effects on suicides as an economic recession and has become an increasing concern for younger people. The main information gleaned from this survey is that children and young people are actually struggling to imagine their futures. Currently, there is a major concern that the rhetoric surrounding the issue of climate change is severely injurious. When children or young people seize on the United Nations warning and the warning of the likes of Prince Charles and Greta Thunberg that governments need to take action in 12 years to conclude that the planet has only a decade remaining, or when the website of a UK-based activist group Extinction Rebellion warns that societal collapse and mass death are seen as inevitable. It can be terrifying and is terrifying for a 10 to 18-year-old, as the message they get is that we are all going to die, and the fact that none of this alarmist rhetoric is based on actual science or factual science is not endorsed or equally promoted, and neither is the fact that, as Kate Marble, a climate scientist and mathematician at Columbia University, says, we can have a sense of optimism by working towards solutions. Many parents said that the heightened rhetoric around climate change reminded them of the panic around nuclear weapons during the Cold War, when lessons were interrupted by duck and cover drills, and when there was the perpetual fear that the world may end at any moment. Michael Schellenberger considers it bizarre that adults would have decided to traumatize children and teenagers like this, and feels that some of the people in the environmental movement are making climate change the new apocalypse. He refers to this phenomena as eco-anxiety and thinks that the cost of all these dramatic headline-grabbing threats of mass extinction is far too high when it comes to our children. It is becoming increasingly clear that the power of fear is being used to manipulate the masses. But it is also clear that when it comes to our children, the price of this fear-mongering by these elite group of rich, power-hungry idiots is way, way, way too high. People need to understand and openly discuss this with their children, namely, that none of these climate change doom and gloom stories are actually based on an exact science. As a matter of fact, it is not even based on predictive science and is purely based on the worst or most extreme scenarios of what could happen, and therefore it would be far more productive and a lot healthier for all of us, and in particular our children, to preach the positive, to encourage your children to be part of the solution, to be creative and active, to come up with innovative solutions to make our children feel empowered to bring about change. Because it is scary to feel like there is nothing you can do. But turning it around and making a person or a child feel like they are in control of their own environment changes it all from this huge, scary negative to an almost exciting positive. The same applies to the COVID scenario. Yes, of course, teach your children to be responsible, to eat healthy, to get enough fresh air and exercise, but also assure them that most people under the age of, say, 60 survive the illness and most recover completely. And yes, show them those positive stories about a person of 101 who survived COVID. They also need to know that kind of a scenario. Give them the facts instead of giving them nightmares. Our children are currently under immense stress, and it is our responsibility as parents and grandparents to stand up for them and to do the right thing for this planet, but also to silence those power-hungry cardboard cutouts calling themselves compassionate and human. Tell them to stop burdening and scaring our kids with the world is ending hyperbole. Let them be kids. Please, guys, I'm begging you. If you or a loved one is struggling with suicidal thoughts, you can call the following numbers that I display on my screen for the United States, United Kingdom, and South Africa. Okay, guys, I hope that this makes my position on the whole climate change and COVID scaremongering that's going on with our politicians and leaders very clear. And I hope that you guys will take this advice and go do something with it. Let your children be children. Have a nice day, and until I see you on the next Royal Gossip video, take good care of yourselves. Bye.